Hey y'all, Pastor Drew, and back with another daily reflection in this season of Lent. Every Sunday through Thursday, I'm posting a daily video talking about our Lenten theme at Christ Lutheran Church, which is the Greatest Commandment. So yesterday, I remember I was sitting in my car and talking about what it means to let the Spirit drive. And one of the things that we reflected on, or that I've been reflecting on, what it means to let God tell us what is greatest and set our priorities is how do I set my priorities? What does it look like to make my to-do list and set first things first and focus on that which is most important? And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. Sometimes at the beginning of a week, on a Sunday or Monday, I try to make a list of the big rocks for the week, the main priorities that I want to focus on. And when I'm at my spiritual best and know that I'm taking the time, or when I just can pause and pray and remember, I set those priorities with prayer. I ask God to be part of what it is to set those priorities and to remind me to focus on first things first, to make sure that the core values that I have as a person of faith, as a pastor, that the values of our congregation can help guide and direct what it is that I'm going to do. And part of this Lenten practice is to remember that underneath all of that, everything else, whatever priorities I set, that the main thing, the most important thing, the first thing, the greatest thing is to love God and love neighbor. And when I go to set my priorities, then I hope, I trust, I pray that that's my guide. Now, sometimes there are things that help us. So spending a few minutes just outside in the trees, sometimes going away a little bit helps us recenter and refocus. A few Sundays ago, we heard a text of Jesus withdrawing into the wilderness to get away to pray, so that he can focus on what God is actually calling him to do amid all of the noise. And then he enters back into that daily routine, but he takes the time away to focus on his relationship with God, to be reset in his priorities, to make them aligned with what God would align them with. And Jesus does this again and again and again. In fact, he seems to always have this rhythm of going away to pray and focus on making the main things the main things. To love God with all our heart, our soul, our mind, and our strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves, and to say, let everything that I do be aligned with those priorities. So I want you to think today about how you set your priorities, what that looks like for you, whether that means taking some time away, maybe going on retreat, maybe it's just sitting down with a cup of coffee in the morning, but how are you determining what's most important? How are you prioritizing what you're doing in your life so that what comes through is love for God, love for neighbor, love for self, so that you're tuned into the love of God for you and that it can guide you in that process. So think about what works for you. Is it getting outside and getting away a little bit? Is it quiet? Is it not quiet? Do you need to get out among people to be reminded that your priority is to love your neighbor? Do you need to go be out among your neighbors to be reset in that priority? But what is it? What are those things that can help us tune back into the voice of God? Those spiritual and faith practices. They can look very different. They can look similar. They might be the same at every time in our life, or they might be different today. Maybe you need to try something new to remind you of the love of God and the ways that God calls us to set our priorities. So that's my hope for today, that you reconsider what those priorities are, that you let God speak to you about what it is to love God with all we have and all we are, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. We'll see you tomorrow. Grace and peace.